I was incredibly late to the Kitchen Gun party. The original BBC version came out in 2007, I think, and the epic remix by Byron TG came out in 2020, and for some reason I didn't hear about either one of them until last year. And that's a shame because Kitchen Gun is something that's right up my alley. And when I did finally hear about it, the song and the lines from the comedy sketch lodged themselves in my brain and ultimately led me to making this painting. The only reason I heard about any of the Kitchen Gun stuff was because one of my kids walked by playing some kind of animation that was using the Byron TG Epic Remix as music on her phone, and I heard it, and immediately it just set up residence in my brain, established squatters' rights, and just stayed there for the next 3 months until I decided to act on actually making this painting. Now, mind you, I hadn't actually seen the Kitchen Gun stuff at this point. I hadn't seen the comedy sketch. The music video was kind of inconsequential, but as soon as I heard the lines, "I love you, Kitchen Gun," and my mind started spinning, I was imagining what Kitchen Gun might look like. And the first thing I thought of was actually The Simpsons makeup gun. Homer invented a makeup gun, which was basically a shotgun with some makeup pots attached to it, and he shoots Marge on the face with it, and it just leaves this crazy mess of makeup on her face, but it kind of works still. And that's kind of what I wanted to apply to my Kitchen Gun idea. I was imagining my version of the Kitchen Gun as being ridiculously overpowered. Maybe it's got a flamethrower attachment for baked on messes. Maybe it has a dishwasher detergent pod launcher, a hose nozzle attachment that sprays both soapy water from a canister and clean water for afterwards. Something like that. Something so big and full of brute force that it's just kind of ridiculous. So imagine my surprise when I actually watched the original BBC Kitchen Gun comedy sketch and saw that it was just a pistol. I mean, it was funny, don't get me wrong. Like, the guy was shooting the pistol at stuff in the kitchen and it was getting clean, but it was also destroying it and, ultimately making the woman who owns the kitchen cry in the end. But I was like, oh, that's really funny, but I still had in my mind that vision of my kitchen gun that I kind of wanted to execute still. Of course, it still took me another 3 months to actually start working on this painting, because I did the thing that I've told you guys about in other videos where I'm like, do I really want to do this? Do I want to work on this? Because I know it's going to be a lot of hard work, and the hard work doesn't put me off as much as being afraid that I'm not going to be able to achieve what I want to with this painting. And it was kind of a tall order. And that was because I had to think about how to fit all the specifications I wanted to include in this kitchen gun vision into an actual image. And I didn't know where to start. Yeah, you can find pictures of guns and stuff and rifles on the internet that you might be able to use, but that didn't seem like it was going to work for some reason at the time. And I just wasn't sure where to start with the whole thing. But eventually I reasoned that if I didn't actually try to make this painting, I was probably going to regret it eventually. So I said, what the heck, let me just see what reference I can gather and take a whack at it. And I knew right away that the basis of this picture was going to be this housewife grinning maniacally kind of while wielding this kitchen gun. And so I knew I'd need a reference for that. So I set about taking a whole bunch of photos. And the main reference for the gun I actually ended up using was this huge orange Nerf gun that my husband bought, I don't even know how long ago, but it's been sitting in our basement. It shoots out those foam darts. And I saw it one day and I was like, yeah, that fits the bill. It was big enough and powerful enough looking that it would support all the attachments I wanted to draw onto it. And so I just kind of resigned myself to the fact that I'd have to do a lot of changes visually to it because orange wasn't going to go over very well in this painting. I had to at least make it look like it was a realistic, semi-realistic metal gun. And so that became the proper reference. So after I took all the reference photos and was reasonably sure that I have everything I needed, I started sketching. And I think I sketched and sat on the sketch and revisited the sketch for about a month just to make sure that it looked about right. And when I decided that there was really no more reason to procrastinate on it, I started the rendering. And I do what I always do. I start with the face and the skin first because the face is just the funnest part and I can't help myself. And actually I'd end up tweaking it a lot throughout just because I'm really good at drawing faces from reference, with the intent of making it look just like the reference, but when I have to make up faces, it gets more complicated because I don't practice that very much. And so I ended up going back a lot throughout the course of this painting and trying to make her features diverge from the reference. And just making her look a little bit more normal in general. I think for most of the painting, her eyes were a bit too close together and her teeth were too long, and it just looked a little bit crazy. But of course, when you're staring at this painting for so many hours, you don't always recognize that. That's one of the problems I have. But I think by the end, it came together and it looked okay. One thing I don't like about my art process is the fact that I take a really long time to do everything. And it's not just painting really slowly. I will do stuff, then I'll step away from it for a day, 2 days, sometimes a couple weeks if I'm really sick of the painting, and it just kind of draws everything out. But it's kind of useful because when you take that much time off from a painting and come back to it, then you can see all the mistakes, or at least a lot of the mistakes, and you're like, oh, that doesn't look right, and you go ahead and fix it, and that's better. And that's exactly what happened with this painting, and I got there in the end with the face, so that's all that really matters to me. After rendering all the skin, I forced myself to work on the gun. Guns, and actually just machines in general, anything with straight lines, are not my favorite things to paint. Which is funny, because I have a whole lot of paintings with animals with guns and other hardware in them, but they just are kind of tedious to me. I really prefer painting people and animals for some reason. But I love the finished effect of hardware and guns and stuff in my paintings, so I did that as much as I could. I worked on it to the point where I got sick of it and I had to do something else. Fortunately, there was a whole bunch of clothing to do. So I worked on that, and then I messed with the face some more and did other things. The apron gave me problems. I think I cut it out for the sake of clarity and brevity, but I had to redo the apron at least once just because the folds were kind of fiddly and I wasn't getting what I wanted by working with one reference, so I had to use another one. But that was a good diversion from working on the gun for a little bit. It's funny, I'll work on something with hair texture, fur texture, skin texture, fiddly little ruffles on clothing all day without complaint, but trying to draw things with flat planes and straight lines is like pulling teeth. And this is one of the things I was thinking of when I was debating whether or not I should do this painting. I was like, there's going to be a big gun. It's going to be a lot of straight lines. A lot of really boring stuff to do, but I was like, nah, that's only part of it. So, yeah, here we are. About 3/4 of the way through this painting, most of the way through it, I ran out of all the fun stuff to do. All the clothing was finished, all the skin was finished. I was still picking at the face, unfortunately, and I just was trying to get the gun done. And that was boring. I got most of it done, and then it was just a matter of cleaning up all the details and stuff, which was a pain because you go through it kind of fast the first time, just trying to get everything, all the values and the colors right and the basic shapes. And then you realize that you did sloppy work later on, so you have to go back and really refine the details, which is just kind of tedious. And when you reach this point in the painting, or when I reach this point in the painting, a lot of times, you just want it to be done, and you're like, man, this is taking a very long time. I just want it to be finished. I'm sick of working on it, but I've invested too much time and energy, and I really like it, so I'm not going to abandon it. It's just that kind of miserable point in the painting that I'm talking about. I don't know, does anybody else feel like that? Does anyone else have problems like that when they're doing paintings or drawings or whatever? You artists out there gotta let me know in the comments. And you don't have to have like crazy detailed stuff to have trouble. I know that for sure. I know that sometimes people feel like it's just getting started is the worst part. Some people struggle with the ending part of it like I do, so let me know, I'm curious. And now we've reached the point in this painting where the narrative has outpaced the painting itself. I'm still doing all the silly, detailed little work on the gun here. There's not much more to say about it. And the next most interesting thing that's going to happen is the art surgery. Because for some reason, I can't ever avoid doing art surgery in my paintings. And this particular piece of art surgery involves me basically cutting out the entire shoulder and forearm and a little bit of the waist or upper torso, something, and moving it over just so that she had a slightly narrower frame. And I didn't actually come to the conclusion that this needed to be done. I knew something looked completely off, I just didn't know what it was. I could not put my finger on it. And then my husband comes along, and he's like, oh, her shoulders are too broad. I was like, oh, okay. Because apparently, so I had used one photo reference for the gun, and I was so in love with that angle that I tried to make the photo reference of the person kind of conform itself to the other reference photo, and it was a little bit off, but I was determined. I was determined that I was going to make it work, and it ended up messing with how her arm interacted with the gun. It was a little bit off, but luckily, when I did the art surgery and moved the shoulder over, it seemed to make the problem better, so luckily it resolved that. And then I had to end up fixing the forearm again. I don't know if I moved the shoulder over again after that, but I messed with the forearm one more time. And then I just kept doing all the little details. I put some cool stuff on the top of the gun. I don't know what those holes are called, but they look cool, so I included them. And that's really about it. I guess I could talk about the fact that I decided to make a mock ad for Kitchen Gun. I know it's kind of cheesy, but I couldn't resist the idea of just doing a funny little fake ad for it. And the way I framed it was, I guess I'm calling this version the Kitchen Gun Mark II, because I know, originally it's just a pistol, and this one is so much different from it that I kind of imagined it as it being the souped up second generation version of it. So you'll see at the end here, after I'm done messing with the soapy water tank and the stupid gas can for the flamethrower. That's a gas can for the flamethrower, because flamethrowers need a propellant. And I don't think you see all of it. It's boring. You don't need to see all of it, but I think I finished the very last bit of it off camera. It was one of those things where I started experimenting off camera because I wanted to save time for, when I actually do stuff that's filmed. And I forgot that I was supposed to be filming. I went too far with it, and I was like, oh well. So, well, there's the finished image. And in a second here, you'll see the ad. Yep, Kitchen Gun Mach 2. Now with 20% less property damage. And of course, I included the slogan, I love you Kitchen Gun, because that's what started the whole thing for me. And that is it. As always, thank you so much for watching. My name is Juliana Wynn. This is Can't Talk Must Paint. And I'll see you next time.